The final episode of Dune Prophecy follows Tula and Valia as they have an epic confrontation with the increasingly powerful Desmond, and I actually really enjoyed it. Yes, despite the fact that I, along with plenty of other people, have had serious issues with the show overall, I actually think everything came together in a rather interesting way. I mean, the episode begins by showing us that Tula actually witnessed Valia's order for Dorothea to kill herself, which means that she's been keeping that secret for over 30 years. And you would think that means that these sisters are ride or die, but we learned that Tula also didn't trust Valia with the knowledge of her pregnancy. And I don't know if people knew this before the show had started, or figured it out as the show was playing, but I was completely shocked when I put together that her child was none other than Desmond himself. Because since Valia has an undying hatred for anyone with Atreides blood, Tula knows that her son would be safer if Valia thought he was already dead. So she exchanges her newborn baby for a stillborn, and has been lying to her sister about it ever since. Meaning that not only was the dynamic of these two sisters forever changed in this moment, but the fate of the entire galaxy was as well. That's some pretty compelling shit right there, because it means that Desmond is the Song of Ice and Fire. But instead of growing up to be a good man who unites the great houses against the oncoming darkness, Desmond grew up to be an evil man who tried to unite the great houses against an oncoming darkness. I guess perspective really is a bitch. But I always thought that Desmond was the most interesting character in this show, so it makes sense as to why I enjoyed this Desmond-centric episode. So, fast forwarding to the climactic confrontation / family reunion, Desmond nearly kills Valia by igniting a virus, but Tula helps her survive by telling her to abandon her fear. Because, fear is the mind killer or whatever. Yes, this whole prequel series was an unnecessary exploration into where that quote came from, which is admittedly a bit silly, but I think the events surrounding that exploration turned out to be moderately interesting. But I'll get back to that in a sec. Getting back to the actual climax, Valia senses an unknown person had a blue-eyed machine forcibly implant technology into Desmond, and believes that this person must be the true enemy behind the events of the show. Which makes sense, because if Desmond is essentially a mere puppet, then somebody must be the puppet master. So after Valia regains control of the situation, she considers killing Desmond, but Tula steps in to reveal his true parentage. Realizing his potential, Valia spares Desmond and flees the scene. Tula then embraces Desmond for a moment, but he quickly shrugs her off and has her arrested. Which makes sense. I mean, I've gone my whole life without meeting my own father, and if the first thing the man wanted to do was give me a warm embrace after seeing me, you better believe that I would shrug him off me too. Because I don't know this person. Why would I want a hug from them? But Desmond may have a soft spot for his estranged mother, since imprisoning her means he gets to keep her close by. So it'll be interesting to see how these two characters will interact in the future. It also means she doesn't have to deal with the sisterhood, who spent the entirety of the episode figuring out Valia's secret about Dorothea. Yes, Dorothea's spirit ended up possessing Lila while Tula was away, which may sound totally batshit crazy, but it was explained in some of the past few episodes. And since Dorothea has had a long-standing bone to pick with Valia, she reveals that Valia made Dorothea and her followers commit suicide, and even shows the sisters conclusive proof of such a damning claim. and as a result, the Sisterhood ends up destroying Anarul, the very technology that Dorothea's grandmother was using for her breeding index, and the thinking machine that helped keep Lila alive in the first place. Which is rather ironic. If it weren't for the very thing that she detested in the first place, Dorothea wouldn't have been able to come back to convince the other sisters to destroy the thing that she detests. It also means that Tula brought Lila back to life and may not ever get the chance to see her again. Though that was probably going to happen anyway on account of Desmond taking her prisoner and all, but it would be interesting to see how a future interaction between Tula and Lila would look like, since Lila now knows that Tula is a liar and a murderer. How is that going to change her perspective of Tula? I don't know, but I really want to find out. And I especially want to find out what Valia is going to discover on Arrakis. Which means that, despite all of my complaining about this season, I'd definitely be willing to check out Season 2. Because I want to see what'll happen to all of these characters. Or the main ones anyway. Because as much as I was engaged with characters like Desmond, Tula, and Valia, I never really grew to care about anyone else. I mean, I can't even remember most of the other characters, and the ones that I can name were featured in storylines that just didn't feel all too compelling. Like, I may know who Emperor Haviko is, but I don't care for the little Romeo and Juliet situation that he ended up finding himself in. But even with that being said, I'd still like to rewatch the entire season now that I have a full understanding of the bigger picture. So, since I'm willing to rewatch the first season all over again, and I'm actively looking forward to seeing another season, I have to admit that I did enjoy Season 1 of Dune Prophecy overall. Sure, I definitely had some issues with the season, and I certainly hope that the characters and storylines will be more engaging in Season 2, but that doesn't change the fact that I did mostly like this series. So, despite what other people may think about it, Dune Prophecy would actually get a surprising recommendation from me. And I may not know how this series stacks up to any of the Dune novels, but I think that Prophecy makes for a pretty good show in and of itself. For the most part anyway, because I don't think I would have watched this series if I wasn't such a fan of both of Villeneuve's films, but I'm glad that I did watch this series, and I hope that it ends up heading towards a satisfying conclusion. And I appreciate anyone who stuck around to hear my full thoughts on this season of the show, so as always, thanks for watching.